I'm staring at my face in the mirror, but what I see doesn't make sense. My lower lip flops in 2 pieces, a pink slug ripped in half. When I reach my fingertips to its torn edges, my hand moves in a mirror as if it's on TV. A tang of blood hits my tongue from a jagged cut that extends below my lip like an upside-down Y, but I don't feel any pain. Why don't I feel any pain? My mom rushes into the bathroom with ice cubes, wrapping them in the wet, bloody washcloth I had been holding to my torn lip moments earlier. "Oh, dear Jesus. Here, hold this up to your mouth." Her voice is clipped but controlled. "Daddy's getting the car. We're taking you to the emergency room." I was 15 years old and had just been bitten in the face by a dog. And not just any dog, an Akita. My mother couldn't say no to someone who needed help, and her good intentions sometimes extended to bringing people and animals into our home. When I was in elementary school, years before the Akita sliced open my face, Mom took in an 18-year-old girl named Claudia who slept in a cot on our sewing room. Claudia had been kicked out of her home or ran away, both of which were incomprehensible to me. Our 70s suburban family was a model of middle-class stability. My engineer dad worked at the power company. My mom was a homemaker. My older sister took piano lessons and was getting into boys. And I made up scenes with my Playmobil people and had a secret club with my best friend. I didn't dislike Claudia, but having her in our house was weird. She wore flowing hippie skirts, headscarves in her mass of red hair, and didn't seem to do much except loll on the cot reading. And she'd just be there in our space when I came home from school. But it never occurred to me to question why my mother had taken her in. I asked my dad recently if he remembered where Claudia came from. "Oh, she bounced around in the homes of that free-form evangelical group your mother belonged to," he said. "And she invited her in. Your mother did things like that." My mother's Christian charismatic friends did embrace the ethos of welcoming the stranger. But as someone who felt like an outsider herself, Mom always had a soft spot for strays. She was the youngest child of 3, and while growing up, felt like an unwanted tag-along to her 2 sisters, 5 and 6 years older. Add to that a distant father and distracted mother who divorced when Mom was in high school in the 50s. Mom never really got over her father leaving. Her sense of abandonment gave her a heightened sensitivity to the outsider, the stray. She saw herself in them, and I think it pained her not to offer help, or in some cases, a home. Claudia only stayed with us a few weeks. Dad caught her smoking, which was verboten, and said she had to go. I didn't miss her, but her short stay made an impression. That I could come home and find a stranger living with us was unsettling. When Mom's largesse extended to cats, however, it felt completely different. Maybe because Dad also loved cats. Over the years, we took in numerous kitties who needed homes from people who were moving or whose child developed an allergy. And one white cat literally followed my mom home from a walk. We became very much a cat family, and I grew up surrounded by little furry companions. In the years since Claudia, Mom hadn't invited anyone but cats to live with us. That is, until the summer I turned 15, when Maureen showed up. Maureen was a middle-aged acquaintance of my mom's who'd been left with nothing but debt when her husband died. She needed a place to stay while she looked for a job. "Well, why don't you stay with us?" my mom offered. "My older daughter has moved out and Louise will be at camp for a month. We've got plenty of room." That's when Maureen told her about the dog, her beloved Akita. I don't know what the conversation was like between my parents when Mom told my dad she'd invited this woman to stay with us who, by the way, had a large dog. Dad did not like dogs. When he was in high school in upstate New York, a neighbor dog chased him on his bicycle and bit him on the calf, bad enough to go to the doctor. Ever since, Dad disliked dogs intensely and avoided them as much as possible. These animals were not to be trusted. Despite that, Dad figured she'd already made the offer, so Maureen and the dog could stay until early September. The day they moved in was the day Dad drove me to camp. Then he came home and saw a much larger animal than he was expecting romping around our backyard. Apparently, he pointed at the dog, hands shaking, and told my mom, "You keep that thing tied up when I'm around." The dog's name was Kato, like from the Pink Panther movies. And maybe that should have been a sign. He wasn't just big, he was intimidating. He had a massive head with a black muzzle, thick jaws, and pointed ears. A dense double coat covered a body that was all muscle. Kato could have gotten the part of prison guard dog in any Hollywood movie. From letters my mom sent me at camp, it sounded like the first 2 weeks went well. That is, after a rocky start when Kato, who had never seen an in-ground pool before, walked right into the deep end of ours, leaving Maureen to wrestle her soggy, bewildered animal out of there. Mom told me she'd played fetch with Kato and said Dad even conceded that for a dog, Kato seemed okay. But he still wouldn't go into the yard unless the dog was tied up. Maureen was gone a lot, so she conferred authority over Kato to my mom through some kind of dog whispering, and it would obey if Mom needed to chain it to a tree when Maureen wasn't home. After the first 2 weeks of camp, I came home for a night in my own bed before the next 2-week session. I saw the dog through the window, but didn't go outside. Mom hung my sleeping bag on a clothesline to air out, so the next morning I went out to get it. Kato stood nearby, and I leaned over to pat him on the back. The next instant, a mass of fur and teeth hurled itself at my face. Roar! I stumbled back, screaming. My hand flew to my mouth. It was wet and floppy. One searing thought flooded my brain. Get away, get away, get away. The dog was between me and the back door I'd just come out of, so I staggered over to the sliding door that led to my parents' room and pounded on the glass, scream-crying in terror, thinking any second Kato would lunge at me again. My dad was taking a nap in there. He shot out of bed and over to the door, eyes wild with panic. He started struggling with the latch to the door, but he couldn't get it undone. I could feel his helplessness mounting as he fumbled with the lock, unable to get to me from the other side of the glass. Then Mom heard me screaming and rushed out the back door. Kato was just standing there, so she guided me past him and into the bathroom, blood dripping through my fingers. After those first few seconds staring at the mirror, my legs buckled underneath me and I slouched sideways, draping my arm around Mom's neck as she supported my waist. She led me down the hallway and out to the car, where I lay in the back seat, holding the washcloth with ice cubes to my mouth while she cradled my head in her soft, cushy lap. I closed my eyes while Dad drove us to the hospital, each turn making me more disoriented. All the while I heard him muttering, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph," under his breath. And I thought that was really weird, since we're not even Catholic. When we got to the hospital, my middle-aged beanpole dad scooped me up in his arms, all gangly, limp 5'9" of me, and carried me into the ER. I could feel his quick, short steps shaking a little under my weight. And I felt helpless, the kind of helpless where everything contracts to what is happening right now. And I surrendered into being a little girl again with my daddy carrying me to safety. In the emergency room, the doctor said it would be better if we waited a half hour for a plastic surgeon to get there. The adrenaline was fading and my whole face hurt, so they gave me pain medication that I struggled to swallow without an intact lip. Then the plastic surgeon arrived and he sewed me up. When I came home from the hospital that afternoon, I had a star-shaped scar forming where the dog's canine tooth had connected at the bridge of my nose, one long running stitch along a reddening scar down the length of my nose, and a bunch of pokey black stitches sticking out of my now very swollen mouth. My dad and sister had a father-daughter trip to the Grand Canyon. They were due to start the following day, and my parents decided it would be best to stick to the plan. I don't think Dad could have handled seeing me like that every day. So I lived in a reclining chair for 2 weeks while Mom fed me soft foods from a baby spoon, gave me sponge baths, and let me watch as much TV as I wanted. Kato was quarantined for 10 days by animal control, and Maureen moved out. Later, we learned she'd had to sell him to cover the pound costs, and he was guarding a warehouse somewhere in Vegas. I pitied anyone who messed with that place. 10th grade started a few weeks later. On the plus side, I got out of PE for a semester. And my mother let me start wearing makeup. As of school picture day, the scars were not even that visible under my foundation. It's been over 40 years since then. Loud barks, especially if I don't know where they're coming from, still trigger my panic response. But other than that, I came out relatively unscathed. The plastic surgeon did such a good job, and my scars have faded so much that no one knows I was bitten in the face unless I tell them. I don't even wear makeup anymore. The dog bite turned into a story I occasionally pulled out at parties. When I was 15, I got bitten in the face by a dog. I'd trace my finger down my nose and on the underside of my lip to show the scars. Then I'd add the kicker, what we learned afterwards. Akitas were bred in Japan to hunt bears. That's why they always go for the face. I told the story as something that just happened, a fluke of circumstances. But was it really? Or was it the result of family patterns going back decades, even generations? Patterns not so easily separated into good and bad that coalesced in a perfect storm one morning in Las Vegas in the summer of 1982. The qualities that made my grandfather emotionally distant probably served him well as a colonel in the army when he was liberating concentration camps in Germany and serving in Korea. And the very things I adored about my grandmother, her independent streak as an artist and spiritual seeker, may not have made her the most attentive mother, especially as a single mom in an era when that was not common. And what about my dad? His Scandinavian way was to avoid conflict and keep his feelings to himself, even when he was uncomfortable with things my mother did. I was never angry with the dog or with my mom. Mom could no more have refused to offer Maureen a place to stay than Cato could have ignored centuries of breeding. Sometimes I wonder how much of my own behavior is just ingrained patterns I keep repeating because it feels familiar and safe. I just have to take a chance it won't come back to bite me in the end. Thank you.
Keep it going for Louise, everybody. Thank you so much.